You know, like I didn't say, okay, I'm putting my girl suit on now, or I'm putting my boy. It was very much what the inside was speaking.
So like, this feels right.
Yes, yes.
It's
And
just
not
the
attaching
vibe,
to
man.
gender at all.
Like, gender is already vibes based. It is completely made up. This concept was invented by a writer. It never happened. Like, the concept of gender that we have in society currently is already based on vibe, not logic, not hard, stone cold facts. So the idea that somebody like myself might be interested in expressing and being perceived in society as a variety of genders, and more specifically to my case, a variety of aesthetic expectations on the male to female, andro in the middle spectrum presentation, being based upon the vibes at the time, the vibes at the function, the vibes of the people I'm with, and how I interact with all of that, makes total sense to me. Wait, is that Dorian Electra? Holy shit, it is. What? I spent a day with gender fluid people. Anthony Padilla, the Padillanator. And he got Dorian Electra on the program. That's kind of cool. All right, why not? I'll do it. You know, when it comes to me, I have no style. I have no grace. This Kong has a funny face. But Dorian Electra has immense amounts of W, Riz, Gyat style. And for this reason, I skibbity. Sorry, my brain is busted. I'm tired. I've been trying to fix my sleep schedule. I stayed up all night. I went to bed at like 11 p.m. and woke up at 8 a.m. today. Whereas before I'd be going to bed in the inverse, essentially. But it's Anthony Fria. He is fucking gender fluid people on the program. Let's go. And Dorian Electra, apparently, which, complete full transparency, I'm not the biggest fan of Dorian Electra's music. However, I really respect what they do. And I don't think it's bad. The soundscape is just not for me. And that's fine. We still stand. Love their sense of style, though. God damn. The outfits go crazy. So shouts out Anthony Padilla. What's going on in here?
I just don't think I would want to be alive unless I can be myself.
So based. What the hell? God damn, Dorian Electra is so good looking. What the fuck? I have to collect myself. It's just too much appreciation going on in my heart right now. Brendan Jordan.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp.
Wait, what was there were pronouns here. She, he, holy based. What the hell? Rare? Very pog.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. Visit betterhelp.com/.
Oh, so for anybody who doesn't know me, if you're just popping in because I'm cool or whatever, and you could sense it without knowing me, and then decided to click because of that, I am Conure. I use any and all pronouns. I am an agender, amoebic blob, non-binary person. I'm very post-gender when it comes to how I interpret my own identity. And ideally, I would like to see us move to a post-gender world. I don't think I'll see that in my lifetime, but I think it's a worthwhile project. That said, if there are people out there who are very attached to their gender identity, and it's a big part of who they are and how they perceive themselves and how they want to be seen in society, there are concessions we can make in a post-gender future where a lot of gendered things would still have the kind of broader aura of gendered relation, but it just wouldn't be something forced onto people in society. Feel me? Like, if you want to be like, oh yeah, I like putting my hands reaching deep into the bowels of a car and fixing them up, and I feel that makes me pretty masculine and manly. Good for you. I'm not trying to take that away from you. I just don't think that all people who are assigned male at birth should be forced by society and societal pressure to be that. So anything we can do in a constructive capacity to move to a society that does not put those expectations onto people is a good thing in my book. Because it seems like said expectations do more harm than good, even to cisgender people, even to cisgender heterosexual people. There are a lot of gender nonconforming cis people out there where these expectations are kind of an L. And there are a lot of people out there who are just like literally the most gender conforming people out there, generally speaking, but have a couple traits or interests or whatever that are gender nonconforming, and people get shit for that too. It's not cool. Trying to move away from that. And I think gender fluidity is a good way of moving toward that goal. So for me personally, and this is the plight of all gender fluid, non-binary, agender, whatever people, I don't think I'm in the minority in that group, where for me, I am very androgynous by default. You know, the canvas is very androgynous. You know, I'm assigned male at birth, I've got a deeper voice, I've got very little body hair by default. I don't shave, I just don't grow a lot. It's not thick, it's not dark. I'm short, I've got a small frame. I got crazy hips. You know, I've got some junk in the trunk. And I really like being androgynous, right? Just being like very down the middle of the femme-masc spectrum and being confusing to people. But I also would like to go full femme sometimes. But I also would like to go full masc sometimes. But I also would like to hit points in the middle between andro, femme, and masc on occasion as well. Like my personality, for instance, is pretty masculine. So the difficulty there is that it's hard to do that for a variety of reasons. Those reasons being, all of those descriptors that I've made are largely in relation to societal expectation for said descriptors, right? So like me being full masc, for instance, would be like, I wish I could be tall, muscular, facial hair, the works. And then full femme would be, I wish I could be still tall or short. I'm already short, so being tall is more interesting. I don't really experience that. But you know, you could do both. Like big bazongas, or not, frankly. Usually not, but I think it'd be cool to try it out if I could. Though it's not really for me, generally speaking. Very feminine outfits, all this shit. Those are expected for those specific aesthetics and gender presentation. But I can't really do that right now. The most I can really do is be the andro, a little bit andro-masc, and then andro-femme to kind of full femme, but it requires a lot more work and the cultivating of skill that I just don't have when it comes to makeup and stuff like that, because I'm just very lazy and bad at practicing that shit. And for one, these are all expectations that shouldn't be expectations for specific gender identities. But in a general sense, we kind of have lumped these things into being more femme or more masc. And obviously there can be problems with that. Anyway, I can't like just be taller and be super buff and very hairy one day and then be very small and more lithe or whatever and hairless the next. Can't really do that, but I would want to. And if it was possible, I would. That's my fucking problem.
Hello, Dorian.
Hello, Anthony. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Hello, Brandon.
Hi.
Brendan.
Don't say Brandon.
Don't say Brandon.
No.
That's a different person.
Let's
that's
go,
so masked.
Brandon.
Brendan is very.
Brendan is the more feminine way of saying
Let's go,
This is a more fluid
Brandon.
way of saying it. I
Fluid
don't
way.
know.
Not
Like,
this
that name
person,
just screams
obviously.
gender to me.
This is
You
Brendan.
are gender fluid. What does that mean specifically? Because I think that some people watching this may have never heard of the concept.
I think that gender fluid can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. And I feel like there can be as many definitions of what gender fluid means as there are individuals. I think for me, it is something that's fluid. And that's why I like the term gender fluid, because it kind of implies like a certain chillness about it. Like
Right.
when people, it's funny because people do ask me about
It's like
definitions.
that one, who was it? Is it Bruce Lee? Be like water, you know? Yeah. Gender fluid icon. Bruce Lee. Anyway.
Some people have very rigid definitions. And for me, gender fluid, part of that is like the fluidity of the definition itself.
To me, gender fluid means possessing both in one. It's like a 2-for-1 deal almost. In my identity, there's a masculine and a feminine that lives inside.
Inside you, there are two wolves, and they're dating.
Predominantly, I lead with the feminine, and as I get older, I try to touch base with her a little more. But in my soul, I just think there are these two coexisting beings that love being there.
So-
Is that a good
So there's this person is so gay. Holy shit. So sorry. I'm just not that gay in my presentation and how I act. I don't vibe with it as much. Not to say it's bad. I'm not making a moral judgment. It's just outside of my wheelhouse. Like, I respect it, unless she wants me to disrespect it. But so this person is very binary with how they conceive of their gender fluidity, which I think is still fair. I think generally speaking, we're talking more about a spectrum between masculinity, androgyny, and femininity, and the sliding scale that is or can be. And we just attach those to genders like man, woman, whatever, non-binary, because that's what we're used to. Because you grow up woefully uneducated about basic sociology, being taught that, there are two major biological sexes, male and female. I don't remember ever being taught about intersex, which goes to prove that it is not a binary system, but rather a bimodal system. I was never taught about that. And then, I don't know, you're never actually taught about gender in school. At least I wasn't. Maybe it's because I'm a millennial Zoomer. I graduated high school in 2014, if you can believe it. But I was not taught about the concept of gender or how it differs from sex. So yeah, because we're not really educated on it in a good and constructive way, we just go along to get along and assume that gender identity and biological sex are the same thing, which they're not. And then from that, we attach the expectations to it, women and females being feminine, men and males being the masculine, and then any kind of androgyny in the middle is usually, the extent of it is just like tomboys, which are overall feminine people with some masculine characteristics, who usually, but don't always, identify as women. And then on the other side of that, like metrosexual, which is an older term, guys, or even like tom girls, if you want to call it, which are overall masculine people with some feminine characteristics more than the average for amab people that usually identify as men, but not always. And that's all we got. And I think expanding that understanding is actually very helpful for people because it can allow them to understand that you don't have to be a certain way because of the dice that were rolled when you were conceived and in utero, and then eventually popped out of your mom. You could do whatever the fuck you want, as long as you're not hurting nobody. Because we like freedom and liberty around these parts. I understand why some people identify with it just feels a little impersonal to me. Yeah, I think it's is cool. Because I use any pronouns, it falls into the spectrum, and I've kind of been liking it more. The reason being for me isn't very deep, I just think it's cool. But there are a lot of people who attach more of a meaning to using it, but that's a whole other can of worms. But I can understand why people wouldn't like it, or even, like, if you had a friend who used its pronouns only, and you wanted to respect it, but it feels weird to you, because it feels dehumanizing or whatever, I can understand that. Of course, you should try your best to accommodate still anyway, because your discomfort is a you problem with something that doesn't really affect you at all like that. But yeah, I get that too.
And what is that binary? Is that just man, woman?
Simply put, I believe that gender is a spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
So, on one side you could say there is the male, on the other side there's the female, and then there is the in-between space where you could
sliding scale.
Fluctuate between both or not even really fit in either of those categories.
We're taught that there is one way or the other from such a young age that it feels like that is the only way, that is almost a way that we are born, but in reality you feel like those are just concepts that are taught to us.
Yeah, we're definitely usually put into a box at birth, and so I think it causes a lot of turmoil for people when they feel like they don't fit into one of those boxes.
What was taught to you about your gender and the way that you should be when you were growing up?
Personally, I feel really lucky that I was born to parents who are really chill and really accepting, and neither of them fit in their own lives. My dad wears women's jeans, rhinestone sunglasses. He's like a heterosexual man, very comfortable in his sexuality, but always, looked up to rock stars like Mick Jagger and David Bowie and stuff like that. And that was the kind of music I grew up around. So seeing that kind of version of
man, it's a lot of fruity motherfuckers out there who were idolized at the time by a lot of super masculine dudes who went on to be very bigoted against gender nonconforming and queer people. Very interesting that. Don't understand how that works. I guess it's okay if somebody has enough cultural relevance and enough money, then it's like, okay, well, they're allowed to be weird in that way, but your neighbor's not allowed to. It's very strange how that works. You have isn't there that one dude from Kiss where they literally just essentially do drag who's transphobic or whatever? And is like, women have to be this way, and men have to be this way, and you're not allowed to do anything else, even though the only reason I have a megaphone to talk to you with right now, and you even know who I am, is because I did drag for decades while doing rock music for your dad. And it's like, okay, man, whatever you say.
masculinity that incorporates like androgyny and stuff like that was always acceptable, you know, to me. And then my mom is a very artistic person, and she's just always been supportive of like me doing musical theater and like playing characters and dressing up and things like that. So I'm really lucky because a lot of people did not come from a supportive background like that. So I never really felt, other than when I was a little baby, my mom wanted to put me in all these little dresses and stuff. And then as soon as I was old enough to choose my own clothes, I was like, no, I'm gonna wear my dad's Beatles t-shirts, and they were like way too big on me, to school. And
Hell yeah.
you know, they let me express.
I'm starting to think, and that's always a bad sign. I'm starting to think, so there is this phenomenon, and I don't know how true it is when it comes to like actual statistics, but there's this theory or whatever, or this like association people make with non-binary people being more likely to be assigned female at birth. And obviously that's not the case, or rather, obviously, like there's no reason to expect that at like a biological level, obviously. But it makes me wonder, and obviously also, you know, people expect the non-binary people to be more feminine. Either, you know, non-binary, afab, amab, it doesn't matter. They expect androgyny from non-binary people, which, you know, is not owed from those non-binary people. However, it is often the case that that's how that works. We stand hyper-masc and hyper-fem non-binary people. It's all good. I wonder if that association, coupled with the visual aesthetic expectation of androgyny being more feminine, essentially just being further from masculine in how like society perceives it. I wonder if coupled with that, the fact that AFAB people are usually at youth and on, it's seen in society for a girl or a woman to be more masculine. And that's seen as okay, like tomboys, right? For some, like, super bigoted people, it might not be ideal. You might want, like, your super femme trad daughter or whatever if you're fucking weird. Like, if you want to be that, that's fine, but that should be your own choice. But I'm wondering if maybe that's more likely to be the case, that non-binary people may be. I have no studies to prove if this is the case or not, but I just, you know, I am aware that there are a lot of them out there. It might be the case that this is because girls are allowed to be, in their youth and onward, more masculine, whereas boys and men aren't allowed to be more feminine as much. Obviously, that's changing. And it's not to say that girls who are more masculine don't get a lot of shit, because they absolutely do, and that's a problem. But it just seems like society's more permissive of a tomboy than a tom girl, if you understand what I mean. I wonder if that's why. I feel like it would make sense. Obviously, also, AFAB people tend to be more educated on sociological concepts, like the difference between gender and biological sex, all this kind of shit surrounding that in the periphery, like feminism and intersectionality, mostly because it's seen as more acceptable and a feminine behavior to be open about your feelings, discuss how you're feeling, how you feel you relate to other things in your life, whereas men are expected to be super masked, stone cold, stoic, never share your emotions, always bottle them up and throw away the key type shit. You're not expected to be, you know, in gender studies, for instance. I wonder if that's the reason why that's the case. This is not like a value judgment in any capacity. It's just an interesting theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching.
They let me express myself, and so I feel really lucky for that. But a lot of people really don't have the same kind of upbringing.
Well, being born male, I mean, I was forced to wear, you know, pants and a suit and a tie.
And you're saying forced because you did not want to?
I didn't want to.
God, this person is so fucking gay. I might be homophobic. Sorry. It's all jokes. It's just so gay that even I feel a disconnect, you know what I mean? Like, if I was to hang out with this person, I'm sure we would get along great. And maybe they're hamming it up for the camera, which is totally within their rights and respectable. Because I do that too. It's just in my own way. But goddamn.
You look so goddamn handsome.
I think it's intimidating is the problem for me. I think that's what I'm feeling, is intimidation. Like, I would never be able to be this way. Even if I wanted to, I think it would be difficult for me to. Because I don't know that I would be brave enough to do it. I think I'm intimidated by this person.
Outer societal standards of what a boy should be wearing or what a boy should be doing and playing with. I think very young, I wanted to put on the princess heels and the dresses, but I didn't mind getting out of that at the same time and just being like a boy
Turbo
at the
gay.
same time.
So it really was a matter of feeling like You could
Holy shit, it's Catboy Collector. Speaking of turbo gay, what's up?
in and out depending on your feelings and what day it was.
Very much. But there wasn't really a specific intention with it either. You know, like I didn't say, okay, I'm putting my girl suit on now, or I'm putting my boy. It was very much what the inside was speaking.
So like this feels right. This
Yes,
feels right.
yes.
It's
And
just
not
the
attaching
vibe,
to
man.
gender at all.
No.
It's just
no,
the
I think
vibe.
it was very much led through
It's
feeling.
like gender is already vibes. It is already vibes based. There is no biologically deterministic explanation for a variety of traits that we assume to be givens from people who are sex to male or female at birth. It is completely made up. We made it up. This concept was invented by a writer. It never happened naturally. It never happened. And because of that, it's already vibes based, right? Like the concept of gender that we have in society currently is already based on vibes, not logic, right? Not hard, stone cold facts. So the idea that somebody like myself might be interested in expressing and being perceived in society as a variety of genders, and more specifically to my case, a variety of aesthetic expectations on the male to female, andro in the middle spectrum presentation, being based upon the vibes at the time, the vibes at the function, the vibes of the people I'm with, and how I interact with all of that at any given moment, makes total sense to me. Because it's already vibes. We're already working with the same puzzle pieces. It might not be exactly the same print on each of the pieces, but they still fit together. And it ends up looking like a cool impressionist painting. It's all good.
And that's where I kind of go a little woo-woo on you, because it's really just more so of leading with the heart.
When you were growing up and you started gravitating toward whatever just felt right, was there ever a voice in your head that was like, oh, but I should, or
The voices!
In elementary school, when a lot of the kids tell me, oh, why does your voice sound like that? Why are you so girly? That the lesson you take in from that intrinsically is that's wrong. That should not be the way it is. And you should follow how everyone else is being so that you are not seen as incorrect or weird or...
So you weren't...
And that's the intention, by the way, of that. Either knowingly or unknowingly for the people who are doing that. So oftentimes, especially when kids are younger, it's not like oh, I'm going to be an asshole to this person, and I'm going to ask them, like, why are you like that? To be mean, to bully them. Now, obviously that can happen, but oftentimes it's genuine curiosity from people who don't know what the fuck is going on, who are also born into this understanding in our society that's been cultivated of boys are supposed to be this way, girls are supposed to be that way, you're not allowed to deviate, or you get shamed in society for doing so. That line of questioning and the way it's being presented, and often the way it'll be perceived no matter how it's presented, is a product of that social conditioning that is part and parcel with our current understanding of gender in society, especially for people of my generation, because it's getting a lot better now. It's not perfect, obviously, but, you know, people are more accepting. It's a constant upwards trend for the acceptance of queer people in society, which is pretty cool. But yeah, the entire point of that often unwitting kind of shaming that goes on is to literally force people by shame, because of people's fear and disgust responses, to stay in their lane, essentially, and be masculine if you're a boy or feminine if you're a girl, and never deviate. Never go against the expectation. Never go against what we, and by we I mean your betters in society, or the people who believe themselves to be often elected representatives and authority figures, go along with what we say or face the repercussions, which are often social ostracization, which can often be verbal or even physical abuse, which lead to a variety of negative mental health outcomes for the person afflicted by these things in society, but even also from the people doing it, because they are often also victims of that same propaganda and social conditioning, though obviously a lot of them can also just be really shitty people who are actively and knowingly and maliciously being bigoted. There are often a lot of people who are just kind of brought up that way and can unlearn and have the capacity to unlearn it. And there's a variety of stories of people who have done that, who have done the work, often with the help of others, to unlearn a lot of that. And that's very cool, and we support it. It's a bunch of bullshit. I don't like it. We should change it.
Necessarily sat down and said, this this is the way you should be, and this is the way you shouldn't be. It was just feelings. It was things that people would point out
Yeah.
and kind of tease versus not.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I guess, you know, my mother, bless her, moms always know.
What?
I mean, she bought me a little like hair styling toy kit, like that little 4-year-olds, you know? I mean, I was young, and one of my family members threw it away because like that's not
That
what
was the gateway drug right there. It was all over at that point. The horror.
boys should be playing with. And so that was also the message that was taught to me.
Oh.
You know, it was just messages from all over that showed me that I could not be this way. openly.
Right.
I think everybody wants to
And that's the goal. That's the expectation. That is the point of the way gender is currently structured in our society. The main reason being because in our society, one that is, this is going to scare some people if you lean further to the right, a patriarchal one dominated by men. The whole point of this is to keep people in their lanes so that boys and men reap benefits that men before them have built into our society, into the literal structure of our society. You know, women could not vote for a long time and had to fight to attain that. Women couldn't join the workforce and had to rely on a man and essentially be property of their husbands and fathers because they couldn't even open their own bank accounts or have a job. They finally got those rights to be their own individual people. The whole point is controlling people. Controlling how people act in society, behave in society, to essentially have them be how you want them to be. In this case, our elected representatives, our authority figures, our religious authority figures, especially in this country, because while it was founded as a secular nation, and the founding fathers literally explicitly said that it was not founded on Judeo-Christian values, obviously, there's been a very protracted project by the conservatives in this country historically and to the modern day in our contemporary Congress. Because of these ideas being so banked into our systems, these things just happen by default without people even thinking about it. These kinds of shaming and whatnot. The biggest reason, like I say, is to elevate boys and men into these positions of privilege and a variety of the things that they're better off for because of those things, and then to keep women in their place, essentially. Because by doing this, you fit men and women, boys and girls, into two separate boxes, which makes it a lot easier to identify whenever anybody exits the box. And at that point, the easier it is to find somebody exiting the box, the easier it is to find the person we need to put back in the box by oppressing them in a social setting, through shaming, in a legal setting, you know, and there's still a variety of laws that negatively impact a variety of demographic groups, not even related to biological sex or gender identity, but also race and sexual orientation, et cetera, you know, socioeconomic status, the amount of money people have. It is all a project to control people and keep them in those positions because it's beneficial for those who have constructed it. In this case, right-wing, conservative, usually white men who have written these laws, drafted this legislation, and gotten it passed, using the leg up that they got, the head start that they got at the founding of this country, where only rich white landowning men could vote, where black people weren't even considered full human beings, where women were considered the property of their husbands and fathers. You know, you imagine if you have that much of a head start, you're going to be filling all the positions of power because you were the only people allowed to have those positions of power. You craft a society that keeps it in place because why would you ever give up that power? And bada bing, bada boom, you're here in the modern day America where we're, you know, facing fierce resistance by right-wingers who really don't want that to change. And this is not unique to the Republican Party. There are a fair amount of people in the Democratic Party who also do this, either wittingly or unwittingly. But it's majority coming from the Republican Party by the conservative movement in this country and around the world. And this is the major reason why right-wingers don't like trans and non-binary people, any gender non-conforming people either. Because they step out of that box. They step out of the two assigned lanes that they have crafted for people based on their biological sex. And the more people that do that, and the more people in society broadly are okay with people doing that, the harder it is to find the people to target and oppress and put back into the boxes. You know, they can't arrest all of us type B. They can't give us all detention type B. Once there is a critical mass of people that are okay with queer people existing because they understand they're just people living their lives like everybody else, and the more they're okay with gender nonconformity, the harder it's going to be to keep that kind of control on people, and the harder it's going to be for those people who are only in those positions of power because of the leg up that they've gotten in society, the harder it's going to be for them to maintain that power, and they obviously don't want that to happen. Anyway, Very cringe. Very L-Riz. Very not W-Gyat.
I just use they, them pronouns because I just feel like it's easier, it's nice. I mean, I definitely get like, someone will be like, ma'am, at the grocery store and stuff like that. That doesn't bother me. Some people, you know, feel really differently about that. A lot of like my grandma and stuff, you know, I'm still like granddaughter, like I'm not gonna push it with older people that don't understand it, you know what I mean?
Oh, that's also another interesting reason why using any and all pronouns, if that's something you're comfortable with, is also quite PogChamp, because I can never be misgendered. It's not possible. You cannot do this to me. Even if you refer to me with Apache/helicopter pronouns, that's not misgendering me. Of course, you know, I'm going to think you're a little bit silly for doing that, because while that is technically in the repertoire, it's not one that I pull out very often. Like, you can't do it to me. And at that point, like, any kind of misgendering that I might experience in society by, like, people calling me sir or him or whatever, it does nothing to me. In fact, it's affirming, because all of it is. But I guess it's not as much affirming as it is, like, I'm indifferent to it because of how I perceive my gender identity, because my own personal gender identity is post-gender. I don't really care about it.
I can dig it.
Exactly.
And for me, like that's okay. Like it's not the case for other people. Like, so I'm just speaking for myself, but it's gonna be different for everyone in their life, you know, and I've been very lucky to like people ask me my pronouns when they're gonna write an article about me or interview me or whatever.
Hell
like
yeah.
Versus someone that's just walking into a grocery store and someone's just gonna assume something about your identity.
Was there a moment where you kind of came out to...
No! Stay in the closet. This video, I mean. I'll bring it back out at a later date, and we'll continue it, but I've already talked enough, and I can't be streaming forever tonight. So we'll put a lid on this one, close the closet door. You'll have to fester and marinate in there for a little bit longer, but when it comes out, it'll be very gay, I'm sure. Are you bothered by people only using one set of pronouns? No, I don't give a shit. I get he, him the most, though, obviously, because, like, auditory cues are very big when it comes to people assuming genders in society. So because I have a very masculine voice, and I use it in a very masculine way, I just get he, him immediately. Even if people see me, and they somehow see through my androgynous riz, and somehow believe me to be a hyperfemme cisgender woman. What the fuck was I on about? I was certainly waffling, that much is true. Yeah, I use skibby/D pronouns. Thank you. Do blind people gender you with she, her more often? I feel like they wouldn't, because at that point they can't see, so all of the visual cues that people use to assume gender are not relevant, theoretically. So then they would use the auditory one, which is my voice, so they would gender me male. Man. Wait, I mean deaf? That's a different story. But there are a variety of visual cues that I do give off that people might use to assume my gender as man, like the way I carry myself and whatnot. But it would certainly be harder. Which is to say that deaf and blind people are the ultimate queer ally, because they don't even know it, but they're just always That's actually... So obviously this is a stupid joke that nobody finds funny. However, that's all of my jokes, and you watch me anyway. So something you got to figure out there as to why that is. But that is interesting. Like, how would a blind and deaf person interact with gender? For themselves, and also when it comes to people they interact with. So obviously there are levels to how deaf or blind somebody might be. So in this hypothetical, we're going to think of a person who is completely deaf and completely blind. Literally can't see anything, can't hear anything. So the only thing that you have left when it comes to communication is touch, and that would often include braille. Theoretically, you could also do stuff with, like, vibrations, because that's also touch, technically. Which is why, like, you know, a deaf person can still go to, like, a music show, and if the bass is thumping, it's like, they can feel it, which is cool. And there's, like, specific music made for deaf people that is based a lot on vibrations, which is really neat. Anyway, I wonder how they would engage with that without, like... So obviously we would have to take out of the equation, like, any kind of education they might have that might push them to, like, go along with the default, like, binary expectation, etc., etc. That's interesting. I don't know. I wonder. Smell? That's true. The pheromones. Boy smell. Girl smell. It's just true. They exist because hormones are crazy. Anyway, I need to get the hell out of here. As soon as we start talking about boy smell and girl smell, that is my cue to leave. So, goodbye. I'm gonna get vaudevilled off the stage with a big hook if I keep talking. And as well I should.